Omaha.
And welcome into the Mostly Football Podcast. Today is February 10th, 2017, almost a week after the big game that happened on Sunday where the Patriots made a huge comeback, 25 points down. We are here live on this podcast. I will be joined by my guest co-host later, or not. He is running a little bit late, but we got a couple great stories to break down. How the format of the show is going to go on moving forward is, now that football season's over, is we're gonna roll with a mix of different topics, but mostly football is what we're aiming for, just like the title says. We'll go with the 4 Downs segment, where we talk about the top stories of the week so far, or interesting stories, and then we'll talk about each division of the National Football League. And then we also talk about the NFL draft coming up here in a couple months, 2.5 months or so. That's pretty much my favorite time of the year. I love football. NFL draft, there's so much storylines, drama, everything. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So let's get right to it. Let's start with the top 4 stories of the week. Let's go with... the first is Atlanta Falcons. They just lost the Super Bowl with a big meltdown. They make wholesale changes on their staff, partly because Kyle Shanahan left, and he's now the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, and then we'll talk about him later. Richard Smith is no longer the coordinator. He might stay on for an administrative role. Former NFL career, he played in the NFL for a while, but now he was the defensive line coach for Falcons. Brian Cox, he's no longer with the team. Quarterback coach Matt LaFleur is now the OC for the Rams, and so it's wholesale changes. The Falcons did hire a new offensive coordinator in a shocking move. I think it's probably one of the most surprising moves I've seen ever. They hired Steve Sarkisian of Alabama's offensive coordinator. Steve Sarkisian was only the offensive coordinator for the Alabama Crimson Tide for 1 month and 1 game. They lost to Clemson in the national championship game a month ago. That is first down. Second down, there is a news story out of the NBA. The other night against the Clippers, the Knicks hosted the Clippers at Madison Square Garden. Pretty crazy story. Charles Oakley, a legendary defensive enforcer, played for the Bulls in the late 80s and then the Knicks and the Raptors. He was an all-star for the Knicks in the 90s. I grew up watching the Knicks a lot. He was at the game sitting, behind the basket, and Knicks star forward Kristaps Porzingis was taking some free throws, and he noticed something was going on, and then the camera pans out and sees Charles Oakley getting shoving match with Madison Square Garden security. He was very, very upset, and he's sitting like 3 rows behind the court, the basket, and the video just shows him getting in a shouting match with officials of Madison Square Garden of the Knicks. Later on, we find out that, the Knicks are a mess right now, and the owner's kind of just, he's not really that good. He doesn't know what he's doing. James Dolan, the owner of Madison Square Garden Network and all that company, he is the owner of the Knicks and is in charge, he's CEO. It was during the first quarter. Oakley had a shouting match against Dolan. He was called to a seat. The Knicks PR staff says, hey, he was being abusive throughout the whole time from when he entered the arena till when he got kicked out and arrested by NYPD. It's kind of sad that the negative relationship that Dolan and Oakley have has led to this, that they haven't got along over the years. I think because Charles Oakley played for the Knicks in their heyday. of the 90s where they almost won a championship in 94 with Patrick Ewing, John Starks, and Anthony Mason. But it was kind of crazy to see Oakley get upset, and Oakley said that he didn't do anything wrong. Of course, he pushed some, like, what are those people called, like usher at the game, to get off him. And, so similar to the situation that happened in L.A. last season during the football season when Eric Dickerson was told not to come around the Rams facility, and he told him, I'm never going to show up again because he was critical of Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher was fired on December 12th after another disappointing season at the helm for the Rams. Third down, let's move to third down. Like I talked about earlier, Kyle Shanahan takes over the reins at the San Francisco 49ers. This is the fourth head coach in 4 years for the 49ers after they fired Chip Kelly and Trent Baalke, the GM. Before that, Chip Kelly was the head coach. So then before that, it was Jim Tomsula, and then before that was Jim Harbaugh. My 2 cents, I think the 49ers, I don't know. How could you let Jim Harbaugh go? If Trent Baalke and what's his name, Jed York, would just, humble themselves and let Jim take the reins. And I don't know. I'm happy for Harbaugh now he's at Michigan. But the 49ers, I think, are the biggest mess with all the Super Bowl championships and Hall of Famers that they have. I mean, Bill Walsh, if Bill Walsh was still alive, man, I don't know if he could handle his name tied to that organization. Their stadium's kind of weird. It's not even in San Francisco anymore. And then they fired Trent Baalke after several years. They had some success building a roster during the Jim Harbaugh years, but John Lynch never has been a executive, never coached. He's from the Bay Area. He went to Stanford. He will probably be a Hall of Fame player. He played for the Bucs and the Denver Broncos. I was a huge fan of John Lynch growing up. I thought he was the hardest hitting safety I've ever seen. John Lynch is the general manager of the 49ers, and he's got a lot to work with, a lot of cap space. He has got a couple of young guys, no quarterback to deal with, and offensive line that has Joe Staley, but I could see them trying to move on from him to save money. They have the number 2 pick in the draft. We'll talk about that in a couple episodes about the NFC West. They play an okay division. Cardinals had a down year. Seahawks had a good year, but they're not the same. And the LA Rams are just changing coaches and all that. So the Lynch-Shanahan era, Shanahan's dad was the offensive coordinator or an offensive coach during the great years in the late 80s. And Shanahan also coached John Lynch in Denver when Shanahan was in Denver in Lynch's last couple of years. Fourth down, the fourth, I think, most interesting story of the week in sports since we last had the podcast. So the NBA, starting next year, they are going to add jersey ads. So a couple years ago, they moved the NBA logo, of Jerry West, put it on the back of above the nameplate on the jersey. Starting next year, they're going to allow teams to have partnerships to put logos, kind of like how soccer does it with their jerseys, or the WNBA with logos of sponsorships. The Nets became the 4th team with an official partner for a logo on a jersey. For a software computer company, I'm not sure, are going to put a big red square that says Infor on their black and white jerseys. Yeah, so the other teams that have signed deals with companies to be sponsors are the Kings. That have Diamond Walnut, a great almond type brand from California. Celtics have General Electric, which is pretty cool. I think I like that General Electric logo in the corner of the jersey. The Sixers have StubHub, the ticket website where you can buy tickets with a safe way. And the rumors going around is that the Cavs are getting a sponsorship deal with Goodyear. I think that's true. I could be wrong, but I don't know. I think it's good that the NBA is trying to mix things up, but I don't know, man. I can't see the Lakers. Say the Lakers. Their gold jerseys or purple jerseys having a red Verizon check mark on their jersey. If it was the Wizards, yeah, but I just don't like these logos that are different colors than the team's uniforms. I mean, GE has kind of like a bluish white logo, but they're making it more just a solid green or white. Just say for instance the Utah Jazz. Since this is most of my listeners are gonna be Utah, Idaho, or have some kind of connections. Say the Utah Jazz put, their purple, blue, green, yellow, white type jerseys, right? So, say they put in the corner of their jersey, they put a I don't know what's a Utah put the University of Utah Healthcare Center. So they put a block red U with it saying medical center, or maybe they put what's another big Utah company? I don't know. If you don't know, I don't know. Say they put Vivint after their Vivint Arena. It's an orange V. I mean, that's just kind of ugly, But anyways, that is the 4 downs. If you have any questions or want to send in any suggestions for 4 down segment, just send it to our Facebook page, Mostly Football Podcast, because you are listening to the Mostly Football Podcast. Today on the show, we're going to break down the AFC East, and we're going to talk about the draft picks that they should make. And I should have a guest host, but if he doesn't come, it'll be just me instead. So let's break down the AFC East. So let's get started. Is this the year that the Patriots finally take a step back? Well, I don't think so. With Brady involved in Belichick, they do have countless free agents and stuff like Dante Hightower, who I think is probably their best defensive player outside Devin McCourty. Last season, they got rid of Chandler Jones, and they got rid of Jamie Collins. They brought on Kyle Van Noy, Eric Rowe through trades, and then they have to make decisions on these players. And so, I guess, Bill Belichick, he's a pretty good GM, just as much as anybody out there. I mean, he gets the guy he wants. He makes great trades. It's really fun to see how what they're gonna do. They've probably got to work on some contracts. Brady's contract, if they're gonna keep him for 5 more years. I don't know. I think the Patriots will win the division again. They'll probably make it to the AFC Championship game again. Who knows? What I do know is that the other 3 teams are trying their best to mimic the Patriots. When I say mimic, I mean they're going to pick up guys on their team that are, maybe had a rough go at another place. Maybe didn't work out, didn't fit. Like, for instance, the Patriots got Kyle Van Noy from BYU, the BYU linebacker who drafted by Detroit. It wasn't really used that well in Detroit, didn't play his strengths. Eric Rowe was a Philadelphia draft pick of Chip Kelly. He was traded because the Eagles could get a second-round pick. He's very versatile. I don't know. I think that the Patriots are fine. I think they'll work things out. I think they have more cap room than we think. They got to sign Dante Hightower. If they don't, I would be very shocked to see who they could replace with that. The Patriots have dominated division since 2009. They've won every year. In 2008, Brady tore his ACL. Matt Castle led them to double-digit wins, but they lost in the division to the Dolphins. And then before that, the Patriots were winning the division almost every year too. So it's very, very interesting the run they are on. I think the closest team to the Patriots is probably the Dolphins, but they're just there's a system in place in New England that can never that probably won't go away till Bill's retired and Brady's gone, where it's just like they're easily plug-in players to do the same thing. I mean, Julian Edelman's doing the same thing that Troy Brown, David Patton, Branch were doing. Gronkowski who got hurt. Bennett was doing some things, but no one's going to replace Gronk. Rob Ninkovich was doing defensive play like McGinnis in the day. Hightower is Brewski. You think about McCourty, he's doing his best. Lawyer Malloy or Rodney Harrison. There's these players that just plug in. They draft very well. I'd like to see them make a run at adding a guy that just goes deep. They had Brandon LaFell a couple years ago that helped. They have Chris Hogan, but I would look for someone that more stretched the speed down the field. Where like Randy Moss, man, that year in 2007, I don't know. Randy Moss was on another level. He's always been on another level. But anyways, back to 2017. The Dolphins. All right. The Dolphins. Sorry if my thing went off. But the Dolphins, they made the playoffs for the first time since 2008. And I think that they need an identity on offense. I think Ryan Tannehill will have to take over the team, be the face of the franchise. They're missing it. Cameron Wake's not going to be there that much longer. They don't have, growing up, they had Zach Thomas. They had Jason Taylor, Patrick Surtain, Sam Madison, Brock Marion. Heck, they did very well with draft picks. But after 2009 or 8, they've kind of, they got new uniforms. They've got a new stadium designed out. They redid the Sun Life Stadium, and now it's Hard Rock Stadium. They have a great couple defensive players that should be, causing the Patriots to sweat, And Ndamukong Suh, Cameron Wake. They got Kiko Alonso. They had some terrible draft picks, though. Deion Jordan was a bust. Devontae Parker's got to step up, but he can be a promising player. They've signed some players and cut them, and in and out with coachings. Adam Gase is a promising coach. I think they'll go 9-7. 9-7 seems about right for the Dolphins. I think that they need an identity on defense. They used to make teams worry about them playing on Sundays with a defense with Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor, Patrick Surtain, Sam Madison, Brock Marion. They made excellent draft choices. But you know what? It's a new era. They have a good, decent running back, Jay Ajayi. They have some great offensive linemen, and we'll see what happens next year. So let's move on to the Jets. The New York Jets, they're dysfunctional. Rex Ryan was there for too long. They've had in-and-out GMs. They had a great team in the late 2000s, before 2011. They had a secondary Darrelle Revis, Antonio Cromartie. They had Bart Scott on defense as well. They also had a great leadership in the locker room with Tony Richardson at fullback. Mark Sanchez was playing like a first-round pick. Totally different before the butt fumble happened in 2013 and then 12. Then they got they had on the offense, they had Braylon Edwards, Antonio Holmes, LaDainian Tomlinson. They had offensive tackle DeBrickashaw Ferguson. They had offensive line solid, and then they just fell apart. Bad contracts limited them in free agency. Draft picks didn't pan out. They made terrible decisions in the quarterback realm. After Sanchez moved on, they stuck with Geno Smith. He's not going to be your NFL franchise quarterback. I'm sorry. There's a reason why he fell out of the first round. And then you have players like they drafted Bryce Petty. They drafted Christian Hackenberg. They had a great steals in the draft with some players. They let Damon Harrison go to the Giants because they couldn't afford him. And they had an older team when they were very successful. Just to preface that, I was on my mission when they made the playoffs those 2 years. But looking back on tape and looking at that team, I mean, they beat the Patriots and the Ravens in the playoffs, but they ended up losing to the Colts and the Steelers in the AFC Championship game. I used to be kind of a Jets fan. They had a great year in '98 with Vinny Testaverde, but they're always going to be second fiddle to the Giants. The Giants have been around forever. Their owners have been the same forever. They've got the blue. They've got the Giant Stadium forever. I mean, the Jets was basically their second part. It's kind of similar how the Chargers are going to LA right now. So the Rams are going to be the feature franchise, and the Chargers just joined because they don't have any other options. And then, the Jets, they're on the verge of just, I think, pressing reset. Todd Bowles had a great first year, but I think a lot of bounces went his way. I think they like I said with the Dolphins, they don't have an identity. They don't have a quarterback. In the division with Tom Brady, you're going to need a quarterback that's half as good as Brady, just to keep you in games. And I could see them going 7-9 and rebuilding. I think that they need to have a great draft. If Todd Bowles has another really bad season like he had this year, I think he's gone. Ryan Fitzpatrick, they don't need to bring him back. What they need to do is they need to get a guy in the draft, and we'll talk about this later. And then they need to get a guy that's been in the league for 10 years that will be a stopgap. Kind of similar to how John Kitna was in Cincinnati when Carson Palmer was there. Carson Palmer didn't play the first year in Cincinnati. Do they sign Colin Kaepernick? Do they bring Colin Kaepernick, or is that too much of a distraction? I heard on CBS a couple months ago that the Jets had some interest in purchasing the team from a major company based out of St. Louis. I won't mention the name of the company, but since Woody Johnson was getting moved to a cabinet or ambassador position, I don't know if he did or not. I try to avoid politics on the show, but anyways, so if Woody Johnson was to sell the team, there's a big company out of St. Louis that would buy the Jets and move them to St. Louis and have their own stadium, have their own city, and it would be very interesting to see if that happened. But I don't know if it's going to happen. I remember a couple years ago, the Jets' biggest fan just basically stopped being a Jets fan, basically, and stopped coming, the Fireman Ed. And they need an identity. They have Matt Forte. They have Brandon Marshall. Both are at the ends of their careers. They have a couple defenders that need to step up. They have Darrelle Revis, but he's slowing down, who I think is probably one of the best corners ever, Darrelle Revis. I'm just worried about the Jets. I think that they'll always be kind of like middle of the road team, but they could have one year that you're just like, where did they come from? Kind of like how the Rams in '99 with Kurt Warner and The Greatest Show on Turf come out of nowhere. Granted, they had Marshall Faulk in the background, the backfield, and they had a couple good defensive players. They could. I don't know. I think Todd Bowles is good. I think they have a good GM. I think they just need a couple more important players on their team to make a difference. Let's move on to the team that I think can make a huge, huge jump in the league if they get a quarterback as well and they have some continuity. It's the Buffalo Bills. I was going to have my friend Dennis come in and be the co-host today, but he didn't come. It's okay. I'll talk about the Bills a little bit. So the Bills need health. Their last couple of draft picks. So in 2014, they drafted Sammy Watkins, gave up their 2015 pick, and to get him. And Sammy Watkins is a supreme talent. He's never been healthy. They've had issues with health, and then Shaq Lawson had a major shoulder problem. that kept him out most of his season last year. Reggie Ragland got hurt, their second-round pick. So if they get all these good defensive young players to just get healthy and experience, 2 years down the line, they should be a playoff team. Tyrod Taylor, that whole situation's a mess. I don't think they keep him, because they don't want to pay him that much for mediocre play. Their owner, I'm glad their owner's keeping them in Buffalo. All those years in the 90s, I was a baby, but my dad would tell me all the time about the Bills. The Bills were a dynasty, even though they had no championships to show for it. Tough team, blue-collar team, and it's sad. They haven't made the playoffs since 99, since the Tennessee Titans did the Music City Miracle. Man, it was so sad when that happened. I watched that game live. It was crazy. It probably shouldn't have happened because he stepped a foot over the line. But anyways, the Bills, I feel like they need to get healthy. I feel like they got a good coach in Sean McDermott that can make a difference right away. I feel like that they have a promising wide receiver in Sammy Watkins, and they should be on their way in a couple years. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. I say they'll go 6-10, 7-9, 8-8. Who knows? But the Bills, they need a quarterback. That they could say, here's the keys to the car. E.J. Manuel was a bust. Doug Marrone drafted him. Doug Marrone left the team when the owners moved in. The new owners, the Bagulas, moved in. And then Rex Ryan, who's not a quarterback guy at all. I think he's a defensive coordinator, linebacker coach at best. Good coach on defense. A lot of players like him. Sean McDermott comes from Carolina. If he could turn Reggie Ragland into Luke Kuechly, give that dude a raise. I think that it's because Reggie Ragland was like the best college football linebacker a couple years ago. Luke Kuechly had a great career at Boston College, top 12 draft pick. So we'll see. We'll see about the Bills. The AFC East, I think it'll remain the same until Tom Brady and Bill Belichick both make their way out of the league, either through retirement or to a different team. I don't think Bill Belichick is going to go anywhere. He's Buffalo. He's a New England Patriot, through and through. So we'll see. I think we'll have the Patriots go 1 in the division, Dolphins 2, Bills 3, and Jets 4. Similar to last year, unless there's some type of home run hit. Let's move on to the third segment of the show. It's probably my favorite because I'm a huge NFL draft guy. The draft will take place in a couple months in Philadelphia for the first time ever. The draft order, how it's set up, is that the Bills. Let's go backwards. The Bills have the 10th overall pick. The Jets have the 6th. The Dolphins are at 22 because they made the playoffs as a wild card, and Patriots have the last pick. First time in 2 years that they have a first-round pick because of Deflategate. So how this is going to work, I'm going to break down to you who I think that each team needs in the division. You can disagree. Feel free to send in your comments to our Facebook page, Mostly Football, or find us on Twitter at Mostly Football Pod, MFootball Pod, or you can help us out and join the show. If you want to be on the show, let me know. This is the Mostly Football Podcast. We've talked about the NBA a little bit, but mostly talked about the AFC East. We've also talked a little bit about how the Patriots can keep going. We've talked about the 49ers. Let's go back to the draft talk. The Jets, let's go with the Jets. The Jets have the 6th overall pick. They have a need for a quarterback. They need offensive line. They need defense playmakers, and they also could use a downfield threat. So a lot's been made of this guy who I think they need to draft. I think that he's gonna go in this range of the draft. I think that the Jets will draft Deshaun Watson, and that is a solid player because he knows how to win. He played in a great system at Clemson where he's the man. He carries the team on offense. You know, the Jets need to draft Deshaun Watson. And I think that if he is available and they pass him, I think that'll be a mistake. I think that if not, I think they need to draft a superstar defensive player that can provide edge rush. But I think they're going to go quarterback with Deshaun Watson. It's time to turn the page on Ryan Fitzpatrick and on Geno Smith. Keep Bryce Petty and Christian Hackenberg there. And I think that's what the Jets will go. So with the 10th overall pick in the 2017 NFL Draft, I think the Buffalo Bills will go wide receiver to complement Sammy Watkins, probably the best all-around receiver in the draft. Corey Davis from Western Michigan, solid athleticism, great route running ability, dependable. He played at a MAC school, and he played on a really good team with Western Michigan. I think that if the Bills decide what to do with Robert Woods, I think Robert Woods could have been better. They've got a hole there as a playmaker. They've got running back. At running back, they've got LaShawn McCoy, and I think they could use a wide receiver that's just solid. They just need a player, that you could trust, that's going to make the plays and has size, and because they're putting so much of their eggs in one basket on Sammy Watkins, but Sammy Watkins has been hurt, so I think they've drafted well on defense the last couple of years, where they don't need to go defense. They need to get an offensive lineman maybe, and then a wide receiver, but I would go wide receiver and pick up a quarterback later in the draft. If Corey Davis is available, if Mike Williams of Clemson's available, if the Bills don't get Mike Williams, if Mike Williams is available, and I don't know if the Bills will ever make the playoffs, because Mike Williams from Clemson, I think, is the best player in the draft for skills positions. There's running backs like Leonard Fournette. Yeah, but I don't know. Leonard Fournette's great and everything. His size, he's athletic. He runs downhill. But man, I don't know if investing in him. I think Ezekiel Elliott had to be in the perfect situation to where he's at. So I don't know if running backs are back like they say they are. So I would say the Bills draft Corey Davis with the 10th pick in the draft, or if the Bills make a big splash, they trade that pick back to get more draft picks. Maybe you look at teams like, who knows, like the Buccaneers that want to move up. You look at the teams like the Panthers that want to move up, or not move up, but not the Panthers, the Saints. The Redskins want to move up. The Packers want to move up. They could make some trades and get some picks. That'd be great as well. The Dolphins have the 22nd pick. I think the Dolphins go two ways. They draft O.J. Howard, a playmaking tight end that spreads he kind of reminds me of Jimmy Graham a little bit as far as playmaking ability, but I think he's made huge plays in big games, and that's what the Dolphins need. It takes the pressure. It can make a safety valve for Tannehill. So they go O.J. Howard, or if Derek Barnett from the defensive end from Tennessee, the all-time leader in sacks for Tennessee, is available, you get Derek Barnett. So with this pick, I say Derek Barnett. They get rid of Deion Jordan. They add a player that can fill the hole with Cameron Wake towards the end of his career and Mario Williams towards the end of his career. Helps take pressure off Ndamukong Suh so he can live up to his high, really expensive contract. So the Bills and the Dolphins and the Jets, they all have key position holes. Patriots, they don't have a big need, but I could see the Patriots going two ways. They trade their pick, or three ways. They trade their pick for more picks. They move up in the draft because they have extra picks. But I can see them getting another corner in the draft, or I could see them getting a linebacker. I can see them go defense. I can also see them picking up a wide receiver or a running back. So let's say running back. I'm going to say they draft Christian McCaffrey at some point in the draft. I'm not saying the 32nd, But if you have Christian McCaffrey, you put him out, split out wide, you put him in the backfield, he returns kicks, that type of value. So you're not putting Julian Edelman back there all the time. I think Christian McCaffrey would be a perfect fit, or Jabril Peppers for a defensive player. Jabril Peppers would be great, but I think Jabril Peppers will be gone by then. Christian McCaffrey, I've heard online that he's getting some steam picked up for going a little bit early because his tape and his measurables are off the charts. The dude should have won the Heisman over Derrick Henry, but voters are kind of biased towards the East Coast. They don't really watch the West Coast. So let's review real quick the draft. I have the Bills going with Corey Davis at number 10 from Western Michigan. I have the Jets picking up Deshaun Watson out of Clemson as their franchise quarterback of the future. And the Dolphins drafting Derek Barnett of Tennessee if O.J. Howard is not available. And the Patriots picking up Christian McCaffrey if he's available. So the last segment of the show, I just want to talk a little bit, give a plug for baseball. I know a lot of people aren't baseball fans. It's kind of getting old. But after a great World Series and playoff run, I feel like, we can talk a little bit about baseball. My favorite baseball team is the Boston Red Sox. Fell in love with them back in 2003 when they actually lost to the Yankees off of Aaron Boone's home run. I really felt like a connection because they had that huge championship drought. They always got these rough players, work really hard. Terry Francona is a great manager. I'm excited for baseball to start because I want that World Series again. I want to see exciting plays in the World Series. I kind of want to hit a ball game this fall or this summer. Hopefully I can. But yeah, baseball is about to start. I think it's interesting. The Yankees might be on their way back. The Cubs will probably be the front runner for the World Series. Indians will be good too. You never know about the Giants or the Cardinals. They'll be there. The Dodgers. The NL is loaded. Oh, it's loaded. Yeah. I mean, you have the Cubs, the Dodgers, the Cardinals, the Giants, the Pirates. Heck, you even have the Braves. They're like struggling, but who knows? They could be around the corner. They were awful the last couple of years. The Braves are terrible, but you never know. I mean, remember when the Braves were like the best? Yeah, that's how different the league is. The Mets can be good with their pitching. You never know about the Brewers. You never know what the NL is so deep. Man, I don't know why I mentioned the Braves because they're terrible. Excuse me about that. But the baseball team in the NL is very deep. The AL, Yankees, Red Sox, Orioles, Blue Jays. AL East is loaded, that division. In the West, the Astros could be coming around. You never know. But enough about baseball. This is the Mostly Football Podcast. Thank you for listening. Next week we will have one episode, a big edition of the show. We hope to have another co-host here. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Spreaker.com, iTunes. Just search Mostly Football. We'll talk about the AFC North or West next week. One of those two. We'll talk about the NFL Draft. We'll talk about NBA All-Stars. And we'll also talk a little bit about free agency in the NFL because this is the Mostly Football Podcast. Thank you for listening. Have a great evening.